still underwater. We are still conducting our relief operations, and we're looking forward to our reconstruction and rehabilitation. We welcome you all here for this unique conference for a resilient Pakistan, where the international community has come together in solidarity to stand beside a country that faced an epic natural disaster. Pakistan once again expresses its gratitude to the community of nations for the emergency assistance extended to our people. We highly appreciate the United Nations General Assembly's call for the convening of this conference. The magnitude of the damage Pakistan has suffered is monumental. While we remain steadfast in responding to the emergency needs of the affected population and the urgency of restoring their lives and livelihoods, we are according high priority to the resilient recovery and reconstruction of the affected infrastructure. The government of Pakistan has worked with international institutions, including the United Nations, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the European Union, to prepare a comprehensive framework document on resilient recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. The 4RF document, which outlines a prioritized and sequential plan defined at the federal and provincial levels to rebuild better from the unprecedented flood disaster and to ensure resilience against future natural disasters. Clearly, Pakistan confronts a monumental challenge. The people and the government will, of course, do everything possible to help ourselves in the process of rebuilding and recovery from this colossal calamity. At least half of the framework plan will be implemented from our own resources. At the level of our local communities, we are already engaged in rebuilding and restoration of homes, villages, roads, and communication networks. Yet Pakistan will need considerable support over the next several years from our international partners to implement this comprehensive plan. We will transform the challenge of recovery and reconstruction into an opportunity to build a more resilient Pakistan, an economy which is dynamic and sustainable. We are determined to do it in an open, transparent, and collaborative way. Excellencies, the rationale for this conference is to demonstrate the international solidarity with Pakistan as it begins its journey towards building back better. We see this conference not as a one-off event, but as the commencement of a long-term partnership with our friends and development partners. We look forward to the generous and sustained commitment of support from you all. I thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. We will now watch a video on the floods and rains in Pakistan.
Not as a one-off event, but as the commencement of a long-term.
बुलटोजरदारी कॉन्फ्रेंस के इफ्तिताई सेशन से खिताब कर रहे हैं। जेनेवा में होने वाली रेजिलिएंट पाकिस्तान कॉन्फ्रेंस का आगाज़ हो चुका है। सैलाब मुतासरा इलाकों की तामीर नौ और बहाली के हवाले से इस बैनुल-अक़वामी कॉन्फ्रेंस का इनेकाद किया गया है और जिसके आगाज़ में वज़ीर ख़ारजा बिलावल भुट्टो ज़रदारी ने इफ्तिताई सेशन से खिताब करते हुए कहा कि पाकिस्तान में हर 7 में से एक शख्स सैलाब से मुतासर हुआ है। पाकिस्तान में सैलाब से तबाहकारियों का हजम बहुत बड़ा है और पाकिस्तान की तामीर नौ और बहाली में शराकत के मौजू पे इस बैनुल-अक़वामी कॉन्फ्रेंस का इसीलिए इनेकाद किया गया है कि दुनिया भर की बरादरी आगे बढ़े। पाकिस्तान इन तबाहकारियों से मुतासर होने वाला पहला मुल्क गालबन है, लेकिन आखिरी नहीं होगा। सैलाब मुतासरा इलाकों की तामीर नौ और बहाली के हवाले से इस बैनुल-अक़वामी कॉन्फ्रेंस का इनेकाद किया गया है और इसमें आप मनाज़िर देख रहे हैं जेनेवा के, जहाँ इस वक्त एक वीडियो दिखाई जा रही है।
I now request the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, to give his remarks.
Your Excellency Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, Excellencies, dear friends, thank you all for gathering in solidarity with the people of Pakistan. For decades, I've been privileged to witness the boundless generosity and resilience of the Pakistani people amidst grave threats and upheaval. From earthquakes and floods, to years of relentless terrorist attacks, to geopolitical nightmares like the wars in Afghanistan that have sent millions fleeing across the Pakistani border in search of safety over the decades, a trend that continues today. But even through the darkest moments, the giving spirit of the Pakistani people has shone brightly. I've seen neighbors helping neighbors with food, water and shelter. And I've seen Pakistani communities welcome Afghan refugees with open arms despite their scarce resources. So my heart broke when I saw firsthand the utter devastation moments. The giving spirit of the Pakistani people has shone brightly. I've seen neighbors helping neighbors. But it was especially bitter to watch that country's generous spirit being repaid with a climate disaster of monumental scale. As the video we just watched showed, the epic floods were nothing short of a monsoon on steroids, as I mentioned in my visit, submerging 1/3 of the country, 3 times the area of my own country, Portugal. A terrifying wall of water killed more than 1,700 people, injured thousands more, and affected a total of more than 33 million, displacing 8 million people. It swept over roads, ruined millions of acres of agricultural land, and damaged or destroyed 2 million homes. And it pushed back 9 million people to the brink of poverty. These are not numbers on a page. They are individual women, children, and men. They are families and communities. And under the leadership of the government of Pakistan, the United Nations, donors and friends rallied to assist. Tents, food, water, medicine and cash transfers were distributed. And the humanitarian response plan of $816 million was launched. But all of that is just a trickle of support in the face of the growing flood of need. At the same time, the people of Pakistan met this epic tragedy with heroic humanity. From the first responders rushing to affected communities, to the doctors and nurses I met, fighting against time to save lives in overcrowded hospitals. And I will never forget hearing the personal testimonies of women and men I met in September in the wake of the ruins. They left their own homes and all their worldly possessions to help their neighbors escape the rising waters. They sacrificed all they had to help others and bring them to safety. Excellencies, we must match the heroic response of the people of Pakistan with our own efforts and massive investments to strengthen their communities for the future. Rebuilding Pakistan in a resilient way will run in excess of $16 billion US, and far more will be needed in the longer term. And this includes not only flood recovery and rehabilitation efforts, but also initiatives to address daunting social, environmental and economic challenges. Reconstructing homes and buildings, redesigning public infrastructure, including roads, bridges, schools and hospitals, jump-starting jobs and agriculture, ensuring that technology and knowledge are shared with Pakistan to support its efforts to build a climate-resilient future. And throughout, supporting women and children, we are up to 14 times more likely than men to die during disasters, and face the brunt of upheaval and loss in humanitarian crises. Women are consistently on the front lines of support during times of crisis, including in Pakistan. Their efforts are essential to a strong, equal, inclusive recovery. It is crucial that women play their full part as leaders and participants at every level, contributing their insights and solutions. And we also need to right a fundamental wrong. Pakistan is doubly victimized by climate chaos and the morally bankrupt global financial system. That system routinely denies middle-income countries the debt relief and concessional funding needed to invest in resilience against natural disasters. And so we need creative ways for developing countries to access debt relief and concessional financing when they need it the most. And above all, we need to be honest about the brutal injustice and loss and damage suffered by developing countries because of climate change. If there is any doubt about loss and damage, go to Pakistan. There is loss, there is damage. The devastation of climate change is real. From floods and droughts to cyclones and torrential rains. And as always, those developing countries least responsible are the first to suffer. Pakistan, which represents less than 1% of global emissions, did not cause the climate crisis, but it is living with its worst impacts. South Asia is one of the world's global climate crisis hotspots, in which people are 15 times more likely to die from climate impacts than elsewhere. At a recent UN climate conference in Egypt, the world made some important breakthroughs. This includes progress on addressing loss and damage, speeding the shift to renewables, and an unprecedented call to reform the global financial architecture, particularly multilateral development banks. It also includes accelerating efforts to cover every person in the world with early warning systems against climate disasters within 5 years. But we need to go much further. Countries on the front lines of the climate crisis need massive support. Developed countries must deliver on their commitment to double adaptation finance and meet the $100 billion goal urgently without delay. And we need to reverse the outrageous trend of emissions going up when they must go down to prevent further climate catastrophe. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today's conference is the first step on a much longer journey towards recovery and reconstruction in Pakistan. The United Nations will be there for the long hand. The world must be too. And at every step, we will be inspired by the endurance and generosity of the people of Pakistan in this critical and colossal mission. Thank you.
Thank you deeply, Secretary General. I now call upon the Prime Minister of Pakistan, His Excellency Mohammad Shehbaz Sharif, to give his remarks. Sir.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Foreign Minister Bilawal Zardari Bhutto, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, good morning and guten Morgen. It's really a great pleasure and an honor to be here, and I express my profound gratitude to my friend Secretary General for co-chairing with me this conference. And also, I want to convey, Secretary General, the deep feelings of the people of Pakistan, the way you have promoted their cause, spoken about their miseries and problems, and become a very powerful voice to articulate what they went through during this summer. I remember on 10th of September, I was with you, along with Foreign Minister, in refugee camps in the province of Sindh and Balochistan, and you were standing by orphans, widows, mothers, and I remember vividly, you met a mother who had given birth to a child the night earlier, and a makeshift school run by UNICEF. Excellency, this the people of Pakistan will remember forever. I'm also very grateful to so many heads of states and governments, as well as ministers and other partners who have joined us today. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at a turning point of history. Events are moving faster than we can imagine. And it is not only a question of how to survive, but it's a question how to maintain our bodies. It's a question how to maintain our dignity and honor by moving forward with a sense of purpose and a sense of achievement. Secretary General, as you have just mentioned, the Foreign Minister, you so aptly described at that time, at the heart of the perfect storm of problems, lies this prolonged exposure to a monsoon on steroids. In a matter of 2 months, the ground beneath us was literally, physically taken away. The tsunami, the most devastating floods, affected 33 million people of Pakistan, killed more than 1,700 people, including children, and dislocated 8 million people. More than 8,000 kilometers of roads were washed away, and more than 3,000 affected 33 rail system was deeply damaged. Education was disrupted for 2.6 million students, including 1 million girls. One can go on about the records broken by this disaster, but truly speaking, we are racing against time. We are very grateful to the generous support extended to my country by the United Nations, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the IMF, the AIIB, and the European Union, as well as many friendly countries around the globe. However, relief work is yet not over, especially in parts of Sindh and Balochistan. Our young and able Foreign Minister belongs to the province of Sindh, where the flood water still needs to be drained to reclaim the agricultural land, to grow food, to build homes. Today's convening is an attempt to give my people another chance at getting back on their feet. Last October, in collaboration with our development partners, we prepared a post-disaster needs assessment, PDNA, that calculated the total destruction and economic losses from the floods to exceed $30 billion, which is 8% of Pakistan's GDP, pushing 9 million people into abject poverty. Excellencies, the Pakistani nation, as well as the state, has responded courageously to this catastrophe. Those who had little came forward to help those who had lost everything. Millions volunteered to feed, clothe and shelter their unfortunate brothers and sisters. 20,000 troops, hundreds of helicopters, aircrafts, and motorboats were mobilized for round-the-clock rescue operations. And in that, I count those wonderful contributions from our friendly countries in the Middle East, in Europe, Far East, and from other parts of the world. They saved thousands of lives and quickly restored disrupted communications. All resilient funds were repurposed to provide cash grants of over $400 million to more than 2.7 million households. Despite our acute financial constraints, we mobilized around $575 million for the emergency, including the UN flash appeal. Excellencies, the one lesson we have learned is that nothing can go back to business as usual. Tough choices will continue to be made, and I'm painfully aware that a taxonomy of harder and harsher reforms will make lives in the Pakistani streets and villages harsher than ever before. But the scale of the resource gap for funding crisis recovery is so wide that it has redefined how we think about resilience. Frankly, it has changed life forever. Building on the post-disaster needs assessment, my government has prepared a comprehensive framework plan for recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction with resilience. Its broad contours are set out in the 4RF document that will be presented to you in the next session of the conference. The first part of the 4RF plan reflects the priorities for recovery and reconstruction, bearing in mind the minimum funding requirement of $16.3 billion, half of which is proposed to be met from domestic resources and the other half from our own development partners and friends. The second part of the framework plan incorporates flood resilience in the design and infrastructure projects such as protecting key highways, the main railway line network, as well as an early warning system and capacity building for rescue and relief in future disasters. Our funding gap for minimum recovery is $8 billion and will be needed over the span of the next 3 years. Excellencies, it is clear that Pakistan's ability to recover from the colossal flood disaster, to restore critical infrastructure and revive rapid economic growth will hinge substantially on the speed of these actions. And the most important link in this chain will be financial resourcing. If that gap continues to obstruct our recovery and minimum resilience needs, the results may be too catastrophic to imagine. This conference is not just about helping to rebuild the lives and livelihoods of the people affected by global crisis. In fact, it is about the solidarity and vision needed to ensure the world's transition to a sustainable future, not just on paper or PowerPoint, but on the ground, in schools, in the fields, in businesses, in industry and homes. Even as we plan for a future of resilience, the shocks that disaster bring can never be wholly accounted for. But resilient societies look for the light of opportunity in the darkness of disaster. It is precisely this kind of strategic reset that I'm trying to kickstart today in seeking your support for a recovery plan for the people of Pakistan who are by the grace of God, very resilient. I know these are times of extreme pressure and economic hardships in many countries, but Pakistan needs a new coalition of the willing, one that can save lives and put them on a path to responsible global citizenship. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm asking of you is more than a rebooting of your compassion for humanitarian relief needs. Today, I am asking for your support for those who have lost their life savings, their homes and livelihoods, those who are sitting under blue sky, facing the harshest of winters and looking forward to your help and support from mankind. I am asking for a sustained international support plan to meet this daunting challenge. I am asking for a new lifeline for people who need to power our economy and re-enter the 21st century with a future that is protected for such extreme risks to human security. Together, we have to rebuild their lives and their dreams. Your solidarity and long-term support to the people of Pakistan at this very critical juncture will make the difference between staying unprepared or facing the future with renewed hope and aspirations. In the end, I thank you once again for your support in this conference today. Your unity of thought and action will always be remembered by the people of Pakistan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for your leadership. I now request Son Excellence Monsieur Emmanuel Macron, Président de la République française, to join us remotely from Paris.
Merci beaucoup et bonjour à toutes et tous, Monsieur le Secrétaire général des Nations Unies, Monsieur le Premier ministre, Shehbaz Sharif, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, Mesdames et Messieurs les ambassadeurs et représentants permanents. Merci d'avoir organisé cette conférence et de me permettre de prendre la parole devant vous pour témoigner le soutien de la France au Pakistan. Nous l'avons fait dès l'été dernier, lorsque le pire est arrivé, et je veux, après les images que nous avons vues, après les mots que vous avez eus, Monsieur le Premier ministre, et les témoignages du secrétaire général, dire la grande estime, l'admiration et la solidarité du peuple français à l'égard du peuple pakistanais. Votre peuple, votre gouvernement se sont mobilisés.
Allowing me to take the floor before you to bear testimony to French support for Pakistan. Last summer, the worst happened. We saw this in the images that were presented. We heard this in the testimony of the Secretary General and the Prime Minister. The great esteem and respect of the French people has been won by the people and government of Pakistan when they were mobilized with great strength and courage after they saw and suffered the direct impact of climate change. I'd like to hail the World Bank, the UNDP, the United Nations, the Asian Bank for Development, and the 4RF, a high-quality matrix, a framework for deploying efforts for recovery with assistance from the international community in Pakistan. Secretary General, Prime Minister, you have laid out very clearly the impact of these floods on the population, infrastructure, on the economy, on homes, and the need that we see to help rebuild and handle the consequences on an international level. It is urgent, and it has been urgent since the first day. France has sent equipment and personnel to help people affected on the ground. 40 million euros was mobilized by the United Nations. A dozen countries across the world were mobilized to this end. However, 30% of the appeal launched by the United Nations has been met, and only 30%. many needs remain, notably in the area of food, notably as temperatures fall during the winter season. France is meeting its responsibility with bringing a new contribution of 10 million for urgent aid in healthcare. The World Fund for fighting AIDS, malaria and other diseases, France has supported this with another $10 million to bring to the people of Pakistan urgent material and need to meet their medical needs and continue treatment. Another component is resilience, ensuring that the country has the ability to meet its needs. These problems will not vanish in the short term when a country is exposed to such a great shock. All of the institutions, financial institutions, must be able to mobilize to support more resilient recovery. As concerns France, adaptation to climate change is at the heart of our development policies, and 2 billion euros will be allocated by us each year in line with our international obligations, which the Secretary General reiterated just now. In Pakistan, we have decided to mobilize more than 300 million euros of projects that will be launched to meet the challenges of resilient reconstruction and therefore climate adaptation also. Finally, there is the goal to draw all of the necessary conclusions from what has happened and to accompany the authorities in Pakistan to conduct appropriate reforms and to ensure that that recovery and reconstruction is compliant with international financing systems. We saw a few weeks ago in Sharm el-Sheikh, and I'd like to say again, that we support the Bridgetown agenda in France. We discussed this with the Prime Minister of Barbados, and we would like to provide support to Pakistan in the short term in its negotiations with the financial institutions, the multilateral bodies, but more broadly also for Pakistan and for all countries in similar situations beyond the funds that were decided on loss and damage in Sharm el-Sheikh. We want to build greater bonds between the North and South with the goal of laying the foundation for World Bank-based reconstruction involving the IMF, also reforming international financial regulations in order to adapt internationally on the financial level to climate change. With the UAE also, and at the G7 and the G20, we want to ensure this is on the agenda also. So these are the three key components that I wanted to mention at this conference, and I'd like to underscore that France is a member of the international group of countries supporting Pakistan, implementing international assistance, conducting reforms, and over the coming months we will, on a daily basis and for the long term, be providing the expertise, the financial support that you need. We will be shoulder to shoulder with the people of Pakistan and also learning from what has happened and adapting for the future. Prime Minister, on a personal level, I would like to offer our full support, and I would like to ask you that you can transfer to the people of Pakistan the support of France and the French people. Thank you.
Selamlıyorum. Değerli kardeşim Başbakan Sayın Şahbaz Şerif'e ve Birleşmiş Milletler Genel Sekreteri Sayın Guterres'e nazik davetleri için teşekkür ediyorum. Geçtiğimiz aylarda yaşanan sel felaketleri nedeniyle Pakistanlı kardeşlerimize bir kez daha geçmiş olsun dileklerimi iletiyorum. Hayatını kaybedenlere Allah'tan rahmet, yakınlarına sabrı cemil, yaralılara acil şifalar niyaz ediyorum. Türkiye olarak tarih boyunca hep olduğu gibi bu zor gününde de Pakistan halkını yalnız bırakmadık. 15 uçak ve 13 trenle gönderdiğimiz 7.500 tondan fazla insani yardım malzemesi.
Sisters in Pakistan due to the flood disasters in the past months. I wish Allah's mercy on those who lost their lives and patience for their relatives. I wish a speedy recovery to the injured. In Turkey, We have stood by the people of Pakistan during their difficult days, as we have always done throughout history. We delivered more than 7,500 tons of humanitarian aid, which we sent on 15 planes and 13 trains. In addition, we shared the products we obtained locally with the disaster victims. We also sent 2 ships bearing more than 1,630 tons of humanitarian aid. I believe that with the arrival of these vessels at their ports, the troubles of our Pakistani brothers and sisters will, to some degree, be alleviated. Immediately after the floods, our Interior and Environment Ministers visited Pakistan, along with representatives of Turkey and AFAD. Our delegation conducted inspections in the disaster areas and received briefings from the Pakistani authorities. Intense efforts were conducted to meet the needs that were identified and bring the issue to the attention of the international community. With the efforts of Turkey, as well as other countries and international organizations, we see that the people of Pakistan are now beginning to recover from their suffering. However, it remains clear that more collaboration and cooperation is needed in the face of the devastating effects of the climate crisis. Climate change and the challenges it produces are a common concern of all humanity. The disaster in Pakistan once again demonstrates what devastation climate change can cause. The struggle against these and similar disasters must be continued in solidarity with the framework of our chosen strategy. Turkey fulfilled its responsibilities in terms of contributing to this global struggle. In addition to the disaster areas, reconstruction of all disaster-prone locations in Pakistan in a climate-resilient way can avert additional suffering. Turkey stands ready now to contribute to meeting the immediate needs of disaster victims in Pakistan, as well as supporting the reconstruction process. In this context, Turkey continues to remain in contact with the Pakistani authorities. AFAD and Turkish NGOs are also showing the necessary sensitivity in delivering humanitarian aid. I believe that our Pakistani brothers and sisters, who have faced many difficulties throughout history, will, inshallah, easily overcome this period of trouble. Turkey will continue to stand by the brotherly Pakistani people in the coming period, as we have done in the past. May Allah keep our Pakistani brothers and sisters safe from all future disasters and calamities. Finally, I hope that the conference will increase global support for Pakistan. I would like finally to thank everyone who helped put together the program, and I greet you once again with affection.
We will now hear a video statement from His Excellency Mr. Jonas Gahr Støre, Prime Minister of Norway.
Prime Minister Sharif, Secretary General Guterres, ladies and gentlemen. The catastrophic floods that hit Pakistan last year caused unimaginable damage. Norway and many other countries contributed to the immediate response, but the needs remain enormous. We must do more to find collective solutions to the foremost challenge of our times, climate change. In following up the decisions taken in Sharm el-Sheikh, we will maintain our direct support to Pakistan in the period ahead and focus our attention on helping those whose lives have been devastated by climate change. This is an endeavor for the entire international community, and you can count on Norway taking its part. Thank you and good luck. In following up the decisions taken...
There will now be a video statement by Her Excellency Ms. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission.
whose lives have been
Fellow leaders, dear Prime Minister Sharif, dear Secretary General Guterres, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank Prime Minister Sharif and Secretary General Antonio Guterres for this timely conference. 2022 was a difficult year for the world. We just overcame the pandemic, and Russia started its brutal invasion against Ukraine. But on top of this, Pakistan was hit by one of the biggest natural disasters anywhere. Deadly flooding, which affected millions of people. It destroyed livelihoods, crops and infrastructure, and put pressure on the most vulnerable people. The European Union, together with its member states, was among the first to react. Our Team Europe response to this tragedy was immediate and substantial. But the scale of the devastation is enormous. Vast surfaces of cropland and villages remained underwater for months. Nearly 10 million girls and boys remain in need of immediate support, according to UNICEF. So more support is needed. And today we are endorsing an ambitious reconstruction plan. We are joining forces with our partners to help put Pakistan on its path to recovery. Our Team Europe support to the reconstruction of Pakistan is around 500 million euro, including our humanitarian assistance. And the EU and Pakistan have just agreed an 87 million euro package in line with our Global Gateway strategy. In parallel to keep supporting the affected communities, the European Union is stepping up its humanitarian assistance with an additional 10 million euros. This brings Team Europe's humanitarian support for Pakistan to 172 million euros. Ladies and gentlemen, the future of Pakistan is in the hands of its people. I wish the government of Pakistan every success with the implementation of its ambitious reform plan. We will continue to assist, including through the support group to be created following this conference. I wish you a very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the future of Pakistan is in...
I now request His Excellency Mr. Ignacio Cassis, Federal Councillor, Head of the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs of Switzerland, to give a statement, sir.
Monsieur le Secrétaire Général, Monsieur le Premier ministre, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, l'ami apparaît dans les moments difficiles, pas dans les grands dîners. C'est ce qui dit un proverbe pakistanais. Bienvenue en Suisse. Aujourd'hui, je vous accueille car nous, les amis du Pakistan, sommes réunis pour faire face à une situation difficile. Il s'agit de...
Prime Minister, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends appear in times of hardship, not during great banquets. This is what a Pakistani proverb tells us. So welcome to Switzerland. Today, I welcome you because we, the friends of Pakistan, will face this difficult situation together. The issue of the day is to support Pakistan, which has suffered the full effects last summer of the devastating impact of climate change. This is an urgent situation, and therefore we must act together in an effective manner in the spirit of solidarity. Switzerland stands shoulder to shoulder with Pakistan. We must hold out our hand to our friends, to the agencies who must be able to count on us. Today it is up to you, Pakistan. You need help today, but tomorrow it could perhaps be us, any of us. One thing is certain. No one is completely safe. We are all, everyone, concerned by climate change, a global risk that requires global action. I would like to thank the United Nations Secretary General and the Prime Minister of Pakistan for initiating this international conference on Pakistan and the climate.
To International Geneva. Chers amis,
My dear friends, when Switzerland learned of the tragic effects of the floods that struck Pakistan and its people last summer, we did not hesitate. In line with our humanitarian tradition, we immediately sent a team of experts into the north-west of the country with a budget of 4 million Swiss francs and deployed for 3 months. Our team of experts focused on rebuilding schools, hydraulic systems and bridges. 5 million francs were allocated for short-term assistance. In the field, we were able to act in a difficult context. Sadly, extreme weather events are not the only challenge faced by this region of South Asia. The flow of refugees from Afghanistan increases the vulnerability and tensions in the area. Here also, my country is meeting its international responsibility, having sent a contribution of 6 million Swiss francs to the High Commission of the United Nations to support and welcome Afghan refugees in Pakistan.
overflows where the banks are weak, as a Pakistani saying goes. Cette allégorie me touche.
This proverb touches me also because it underscores the principle of the challenge of international cooperation and the climate. We must work together. We must ensure that we do is a model that can be followed. This framework resonates perfectly with the spirit of international Geneva, and I invite you all to implement this framework so that it may be crowned with success. Thank you for your attention.
Merci, excellent.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and thank you very much for hosting us here in Geneva.
We will be now taking a 2-minute so that the speakers can leave the rostrum, ministers and the other speakers can come to the fore. Please remain in your seats. Thank you.
Success. Thank you for your attention.
Merci, excellent.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and thank you very much for hosting.
हाँ 2 मिनट का ब्रेक है जेनेवा में सैलाब मुतासरा इलाकों की तामीर नौ और बहाली पर बैन अल-अक़वामी कॉन्फ्रेंस से वज़ीर आज़म शहबाज शरीफ ने खिताब किया। उनका कहना था कि कॉन्फ्रेंस में शिरकत करने पर तमाम शुरका का मशकूर हूँ। आज पाकिस्तान को सैलाब की वजह से दरपेश मसाइल पर बात करने आया हूँ। आज हम तारीख के अहम मोड़ पर खड़े हैं। पाकिस्तान को सैलाब की वजह से जानी और माली नुकसान हुआ। पाकिस्तान के अवाम UN सेक्रेटरी जनरल के ताउन को हमेशा याद रखेंगे। गुज़श्ता बरस 10 सितंबर को एंटोनियो गुतेरेस के हमरा सैलाब मुतासरा इलाकों का दौरा किया था। पाकिस्तानी अवाम का दुख दर्द महसूस करने पर तमाम शुरका का शुक्रिया अदा करता हूँ। सैलाब की वजह से तालीमी इदारे, ज़राअत और देहात को नुकसान पहुँचा। पाकिस्तान मुश्किल वक्त में मदद करने वाले ममालिक को कभी नहीं भूलेगा। सिंध बलूचिस्तान के कई इलाकों में अब भी सैलाबी पानी मौजूद है। सैलाब के बायस इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर तबाह हो गया, जबकि मईशत बुरी तरह मुतासर हुई है। सैलाब मुतासरीन को दोबारा बहाल करके अच्छा मुस्तकबिल देना है। सैलाब मुतासरीन की बहाली के लिए बड़े पैमाने पर इमदाद की ज़रूरत है। सैलाब मुतासरीन की बहाली के लिए अब तक जो तखमीना लगाया गया है 16.3 अरब डॉलर की ज़रूरत है और सैलाब मुतासरीन की बहाली और तामीर नौ के लिए फ्रेमवर्क तैयार किया है। सैलाब से काश्तकारों को भी नुकसान पहुँचा, जिससे खुराक की किल्लत पैदा हुई है। जेनेवा में सैलाब मुतासरा इलाकों की तामीर नौ और बहाली पर बैन अल-अक़वामी कॉन्फ्रेंस रेजिलिएंट पाकिस्तान कॉन्फ्रेंस का इनेकाद किया गया है। सेक्रेटरी जनरल अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा एंटोनियो गुतेरेस इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में पाकिस्तान के साथ मेज़बान हैं और को चेयर कर रहे हैं वज़ीर आज़म शहबाज शरीफ के साथ। इससे कबल इफ्तिताही सेशन से खिताब करते हुए वज़ीर ख़ारजा बिलावल भुट्टो ज़रदारी का कहना था कि सैलाब से 3 करोड़ 30 लाख अफराद मुतासर हुए। सैलाब के 5 माह बाद अभी कई इलाके ज़ेर आब हैं।
Co-chair, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning and assalamu alaikum. It's a great privilege to be part of this important plenary focused on Pakistan's resilient recovery strategy. I would like to express my gratitude to the Administrator, United Nations Development Program, Mr. Ashim Steiner, representative from the World Bank Group, all other multilateral institutions for the support to Pakistan during this most critical time. Thanks are also due to our bilateral partners, friendly countries, NGOs, and civil society organizations. You would have seen in the opening session the scale of recent flood disaster which took place in Pakistan. With the suffering of the people in mind, I would briefly state the narrative of disaster to highlight the plight of the people back home. Ladies and gentlemen, while Pakistan was facing the challenges caused by global adverse developments like Russian-Ukraine war, energy crisis, rising inflation and hiking poverty, Pakistan faced the catastrophe of unprecedented floods in the recent history. Allow me to reiterate the widespread damages caused by the floods in Pakistan. Last year, the heavy monsoon rains, 6 times of the average of the past 30 years, caused huge flooding and devastation, especially in the provinces of Sindh and Balochistan. The damages were extensive, with 33 million people affected, over 1,700 lives lost, 13,000 injuries, millions of women and children becoming vulnerable. A total of over 13,000 kilometers of roads and 440 bridges were destroyed, while 5 million acres of crop were damaged. Over 2 million houses were either damaged or destroyed, and around 1 million livestock was confirmed to have been dead or missing. Ladies and gentlemen, a significant portion of the country remained submerged in water for months, affecting subsequent crop cycle and closing down schools and hospitals and making large portion of the rural hinterland inaccessible. The standing buildings were used as temporary shelters and to provide necessary services. It is estimated that 22,000 schools were affected, leaving 3.5 million students without access to classrooms. This is leading to a learning crisis in the country, and it will take coordinated efforts and resources to rebuild the education system. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the government of Pakistan placed recovery and rehabilitation of the affected people as its most important priority. Through Benazir Income Support Program, rupees 70 billion were disbursed as emergency measure to the flood affectees, families, and till now, 8.17 million flood victims have been given the cash assistance. As a result, 2.7 million families got straight-away cash relief and the other assistance which was immediately required. We are appreciative of the fact that the World Bank promptly announced $1.6 billion assistance for rehabilitation in flood areas and an additional 500 million for building climate-resilient Pakistan. You are aware that PDNA estimated economic and physical losses caused by the floods as over $30 billion. According to their calculation, which are jointly conducted by World Bank, UNDP, European Union, and Asian Development Bank, with the assistance of the Planning Ministry of Pakistan, their calculation of the needs for the rehabilitation and reconstruction work is $16.3 billion. We have been working to obviously plan this reconstruction and rehabilitation work over the period of 3 years, with at least half of the requirements to be met by Pakistan own system and assistance. Our GDP, keeping in view of the size of the GDP, we believe that over the next 3 years period for this phase of reconstruction and rehabilitation, we should be able to contribute $8 billion out of the $16.3 billion to carry out this rehabilitation and the reconstruction work. The support from the friendly countries and the multilateral donors will not only help with flood relief and rehabilitation effort, but will also create fiscal space and external debt sustainability for the country, reinforcing its efforts to implement the ongoing IMF program. The climate change has led to devastating spillover impacts on Pakistan. This is a major exogenous shock representing a global public externality. Pakistan contributes less than 1% of greenhouse gas emissions, but yet it has found itself at the center of climate change-induced devastation in the form of catastrophe of the floods last year. Concerns about food security are paramount. Social stability is also a concern amid high energy prices, inflation, and macroeconomic policies. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make it clear that Pakistan remains committed to its international obligations and is on track regarding our macroeconomic fiscal reform agenda, which focuses on increasing our revenues, increasing spending on social sector programs, decreasing expenditure wherever we can moderate, and creating thereby more fiscal space for the reconstruction rehabilitation phase, which we have to undertake in the next 3 years. Pakistan is right now facing challenges on account of additional outlays incurred and projected for the flood-related rescue, relief, and rehabilitation needs. Existing limited space negatively impacts Pakistan's ability to provide resilience and determination to all those affected by the natural disaster. While appreciating the resilience and determination of people of Pakistan, it is obvious that they need help and global cooperation, which we are thankful to all those who have been extending and communicating to us. Pakistan is carrying out the fiscal reforms necessary for long-term recovery and sustainability. However, we believe that we urgently need short-term assistance as we navigate through a number of challenges. We hope that our friends, partners, and supporters, as always, stand with us by providing the required assistance during this most critical phase of Pakistan. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan's urgent expectations from this conference is not only merely a commitment of resource for rehabilitation and reconstruction in the short to medium term, but also we are looking forward for on-budget inflows and assistance during the remainder of the current fiscal year, in order to make it possible for the government of Pakistan to continue providing the much-needed relief to the flood affectees of 33 million people in Pakistan. Let me say a few words that, if considered appropriate by our friendly countries, debt swaps and other use of financial instruments tied to reallocation of equivalent domestic budgetary resources would would also free up the resources to be spent for this noble purpose. We must remember that we are in this fight against climate-induced disaster together. There is only one world, and we must work together to support each other in times of crisis. Pakistan is extremely grateful for the support of the international community as we strive to recover, rehabilitate and rebuild. At the end, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to all those friendly countries, United Nations, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, Islamic Development Bank, and all other multilateral institutions, NGOs and donors, without whose help we could not have been able to deal with this catastrophe which Pakistan just faced in 2022. I'm extremely grateful to all of you, and thank you for patience listening. God bless you all. Thank you. Very kind.
I now request His Excellency Mr. Akim Steiner, the UNDP Administrator, to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the Minister of Finance of Pakistan, distinguished ministers and fellow panelists, dear Martin, my colleague from the World Bank. Let me also, on behalf of the United Nations Development Programme, join the Secretary General and my co-chair in welcoming you both to this meeting here, but also to an attempt to break new ground. I was just looking at the presence of ministers of Pakistan on this podium. If you look from left to right, I think you will recognize that we are living in a different age in which climate change, natural disasters, economy, planning, and indeed the development pathways of countries are being rewritten by circumstance, sometimes by design at others, by disasters on other occasions. Just a few months ago, Pakistan endured one of the most destructive climate-induced disasters in recorded history. We have heard from the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, from you, my dear co-chair, just now, some of the numbers. But behind those numbers lie destroyed livelihoods, lost lives, but above all, the extraordinary challenge of how do you restore hope when you are faced with such a gigantic task. And to do so on the back of a reality where Pakistan, like virtually every other country over the last 2-3 years, was just emerging from COVID-19, a pandemic, and all that it did to our societies. Today the floodwaters may have partially receded, but what remains is a monumental moment of reckoning for the entire world. The Secretary General spoke to it, the Prime Minister, and so together with international partners, including the United Nations, Pakistan is now undertaking an urgent and extraordinary initiative to save lives, restore livelihoods, and rebuild a nation. Pakistan, as you just said, Minister, faces a long road to recovery. The wider world faces a choice, because the truth is that these events are increasingly predictable, and only the latest in a series of such disasters in Pakistan and beyond, historic climate events that are becoming the new normal. Today, on the 9th of January, we are meeting. Look to the east in Australia, extraordinary flood events. Look to the west in California, extreme weather events. Look to Central Europe, and people are wondering what happened to snow in winter. We are living in profoundly changing times. And in Pakistan, at this moment, we have an opportunity to choose a new direction with an innovative model for international cooperation. And I have to say that when just a few weeks ago we began an intense effort of convening and organizing this conference here, framed not as a pledging conference, but really as a conference about how we move beyond reacting to every disaster by having just an emergency response. This conference is being convened by Pakistan and the United Nations with a different logic and also a different aspiration. And I hope that by the time that you leave this conference venue this evening, you will feel reassured that the call to the world that Pakistan sent out to friends, supporters, partners to step up at this critical moment has actually been responded to. A few weeks ago, that was not at all self-evident. I must say today I feel extremely excited about the prospect of framing a new form of response and partnership. It is time to step up and support the long-term, the systems-based approaches to recovery when disaster strikes again. Pakistan, and that is a recognition that I think the world also recognized, is not in its plight alone. And indeed, it is not even in the broader context of climate change one of the most significant emitters, less than 1%. And yet it is, in terms of its ranking on the Global Climate Risk Index, the 8th most vulnerable country in the world. And to those who say, well, is climate change and flood events really linked? How else would you explain what Pakistan in just one decade has been experiencing, not in terms of just on its own, but remember the images of the last 12 months, of forest fires, of droughts, of floods, of extreme weather events, hurricanes, typhoons. This is the new normal, and we need to, as an international community, find a way in which we together can respond to this new normal. The government of Pakistan, as you have also laid out just now, is doing its part in recovery and reconstruction, but it will need financial and technical support to tackle the massive development challenges that lie ahead, including building the systems for resilience. Advancing reconstruction of this type will require fiscal space on the back of COVID-19 that is currently severely constrained in Pakistan, as you also said, Minister. Creating this space will require new pathways for support, including private sector investments facilitated by innovative financial instruments, including the de-risking of private capital and support for a pipeline of broader investment opportunities, including some of the innovative forms that you mentioned just now. Here and now, that process must begin with new investments in climate resilience, broader coalitions of partners, and just a look around this room and the announcements you will hear today will, I think, illustrate that this is not a desired future. It is now becoming, through the experience that Pakistan has gone through, a reality that we all are part of. And critically, collective responsibility for the shocking loss and damage from which no nation will be immune in the future, as also the Foreign Minister of Switzerland pointed out in his opening remarks. Assessing the extent of damages and losses has been a pivotal part of this joint response under the leadership of the Ministry of Planning, Development and Special Initiatives, the United Nations, together with the Asia Development Bank, the European Union and the World Bank, and our UN sister agencies also in the UN country team, work together with you to complete the post-disaster needs assessment, the foundation for today's framework for recovery. And it identified some 16 billion in urgently needed financing to support the recovery. The assessment directly informed this resilient recovery, rehabilitation, reconstruction framework, the 4RF. We always have strange ways of baptizing these very real things into very technocratic language, but 4RF it is. A comprehensive policy-based approach comprising sectoral interventions, public and private sector financial strategies, and implementation and monitoring arrangements. We now look forward to the presentation of this framework, and I also want to particularly thank His Excellency Professor Ahsan Iqbal, the Minister of Planning, Development and Reform of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, for the excellent partnership that we as an international community, and I think, Martin, I speak on your behalf as well, have enjoyed in working together under great pressure, but also with great purpose and direction in the last few months. Thank you so much.
I now request His Excellency Professor Ahsan Iqbal, Minister for Planning, Development and Reform of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, to say a few words.
The excellent partnership that we as an international community, and I think, Martin, I speak on your behalf as well, have enjoyed in working together under great pressure, but also with great purpose and direction in the last few months. Thank you so much.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for coming here. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for coming here today to express solidarity with the people of Pakistan who have experienced worst climate disaster of recent times. Pakistan has faced floods in 2022, but as one of the most vulnerable countries to climate disasters, we face a range of disasters that we experienced during 2022, starting with very high temperatures, forest fires, droughts, culminating into unprecedented floods within a short span of 4 months. Pakistan's disasters like torrential floods, glacial lake outburst flood, and just to mention that Pakistan has the highest snow after North Pole and South Pole in its northern areas, which is at the danger of melting and causing glacial lake outburst floodings. We face droughts, heat waves, earthquakes, and during this year, as I said, we have experienced almost all of them. The heat wave of 2022 was the hottest in 61 years. So I can safely say that Pakistan is in the eye of climate change storm. Disasters return period average has become shorter from 56 years in 1929 to only 5 to 6 years in 2005. So that shows that the frequency of disasters is increasing at a rapid pace. The horror of our coming era will be born out of heat, fire, water, and snow. Ladies and gentlemen, all these disasters have impacted our economy in a very serious manner. Huge economic losses due to damage of infrastructure and loss of crops, significant losses in GDP, higher poverty rates, great risk of preventable diseases, especially to most vulnerable segments, women, children, and elderly, unprecedented recovery and reconstruction needs, degradation of ecosystem, degradation of environment and climate, job loss and disruption. Women and girls are at risk of gender-based violence and child marriage, degradation of environment and climate, hyper-poverty and hyper-malnutrition. The worst part of the floods in 2022 was that it was not only a climate disaster, but it also turned into a human tragedy as it hit the 20 poorest districts of Pakistan. So those people who were already poor, who were already malnourished, have been thrown into a cycle of hyper-poverty and hyper-malnutrition. Next, please. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2022 floods were of a scale never seen before. 33 million people in different parts of Pakistan were affected. More than 1,700 have lost their lives, and 1/3 of them are children, and more than 8 million are displaced. And the two provinces, Sindh and Balochistan, have been almost completely devastated. But the other provinces, Punjab, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and our special regions in the north, have also been significantly impacted, but they continue to be most vulnerable to future disasters. Next. With the help of our development partners, we have also been able to identify what were the damages and losses due to these floods. We are very grateful to World Bank, Asian Development Bank, European Union, UN and its agencies, and other development partners for working as a team to document in shortest possible time the post-disaster need assessment report for Pakistan, which put $14.9 billion damage and $15.23 billion of economic loss, with combined cost of over $30 billion to Pakistan's economy. This was a massive blow and hit to an economy which was just beginning to recover from crisis. And this also makes Pakistan very unique. Ladies and gentlemen, every country has faced pandemic. Every country is today facing the supply shock, but no country has experienced a disaster of this scale that Pakistan has faced. So therefore, the case of Pakistan is very different and unique. The social sectors, housing, health, education, culture and heritage had serious damages in infrastructure, road, transport, railway communication, energy, water, sanitation, municipal services, community infrastructures were damaged. In our productive sectors, agriculture, food, livestock, fisheries, water resources, irrigation, commerce, and industries were damaged, and governance, social sustainability, inclusion of gender, social protection, livelihoods were lost. Next, please. The previous one, the previous, please. Previous. And let me here share with you that Pakistan was one of the first countries to adopt Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. We called SDGs as National Development Goals. Our parliament passed a resolution to adopt Sustainable Development Goals, and we started to work on SDGs right away. But these floods, ladies and gentlemen, have washed all the gains that we made during 7 years. Almost 9 million people have been pushed into poverty. Additional 7.6 million people are facing food insecurity. 17 million women and children are at greater risk of preventable diseases. 4.3 million people with job loss and disruption to their livelihoods, and more than 600,000 women and girls at risk of gender-based violence and child marriage due to disaster situation. Next, please. Next. Next. So towards recovery, ladies and gentlemen, we have developed a 4RF framework. Its details are there in your packet also. You can read in more greater detail how to have resilient recovery, rehabilitation and reconstruction framework. The vision is an inclusive and resilient recovery through a whole of Pakistan approach, leading to sustainable development for the people and the country. The objectives are to improve governance and enhance capacity of state institutions to face the disasters and mitigate against them, restore livelihoods and economic opportunities, ensure social inclusion and participation in all aspects of recovery and related development, restore and improve basic services and physical infrastructure. And above all, also underlying important objective is to achieve sustainable climate resilience through rebuilding and re-engineering our infrastructure. Our challenge as Ministry of Planning is double. Not only we have to build a new infrastructure, a modern infrastructure for future development, we also have to re-engineer our built infrastructure to be more resilient and adaptable for future shocks. So the foundation is Build Back Better, people-centered socio-economic recovery, building systematic resilience against natural hazards and climate change impacts. Next. The 4RF sectors have 4 major goals: governance, whose cost has been estimated at $413 billion, strategic resilient objective, resilience plan, objective 2, agriculture, livelihood, finance markets, $4.3 billion, SRO 3, social inclusion, including gender, culture, heritage, $1.7 billion, and 4, education, health, nutrition, water,
जेनेवा में सैलाब मुतासरा इलाकों की तामीर और बहाली पर बैन अवी कॉन्फ्रेंस से वफाकी वजीर बराए मनसूबाबंदी और तरक्की एहसन इकबाल खिताब कर रहे हैं। इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में पाकिस्तान के सैलाब मुतासरा इलाकों की तामीर और बहाली के लिए बैन अवी बरदरी से मदद तलब की गई है। सेक्रेटरी जनरल अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा एंटोनियो गुतेरेस पाकिस्तान के साथ इस कॉन्फ्रेंस के मेज़बान हैं।
$1 over next 3 years so that we can rebuild our damaged infrastructure in shortest possible time. The long-term resilient climate resilient infrastructure development plan is over $13 billion, which involves national flood protection program and building new infrastructure or re-engineering existing infrastructure to stand against future shocks. Next. As I told you, out of $16.3 billion, the local resources we hope to mobilize are $8.15 billion, and we look for.
जेनेवा के मनाजिर आप देख रहे हैं जन सैलाब में मुतासरा इलाकों की तामीर और बहाली के हवाले से पाकिस्तान की मेज़बानी में बैनुल अक़वामी कॉन्फ्रेंस जारी है।